Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name's Erica Oriens, and I'm with the Michigan Community College Association. It's nice to see your smiling faces for many of you, or see your names out there. It's good to see many of you. Thank you for joining us today. This is the session that we're hosting for potential university partners for a new project that we're launching called the Strengthening My Workforce Pathways. Next slide, please. We have a packed agenda today, and we've scheduled this meeting for 90 minutes, but we're hoping we can get through in about 60 minutes. We will start with welcome and introductions. We'll provide you with a project overview, talk about the vision for the transfer agreements that we want to build with this project. My colleague Katie will talk to you about the university's intent to participate, and then close out with timeline and next steps. So first of all, we'll start out with welcome and introductions. And I am joined today by my colleague, Katie Girardello, who is manning the slides. And obviously we have done this many times together because she advances the slides right when I need it. As I said, my name's Erica. I'm joined by Katie today. And we have a small but mighty staff at the Center for Student Success, including our colleagues, Jenny Shanker and Precious Miller, who lead other aspects of the work that we do in support of community colleges across the state. It is helpful to us if you're joining us today to please rename yourself by including the name of your college or university after your name. That helps us if you're asking questions in the chat, or if other folks are interested in knowing where you're from. To do that, you can open your participant screen box, or you can also just hover over your picture or your name, click on the 3-dot ellipsis, and then you can click rename and put the name of your institution after your name. Appreciate you doing that. Throughout the presentation today, we will be monitoring the chat, and if you would like to ask us any questions, please include those in the chat. We'll have a few points throughout the presentation to respond to questions, but we will monitor the chat to see when those come through. And then, our normal Zoom etiquette, if you want to speak, and you can raise your hand in the chat, and then you get popped up to the top of our list of people here, and we'll be able to, you can unmute yourself, or we can unmute you to ask questions. Next slide. Okay, so let's get started. Strengthening My Workforce Pathways project overview. Some history behind this. At the Center for Student Success, for many years, we have been working with community colleges on the principles of guided pathways, and also working with university partners from across the state to design better transfer pathways for students. And much of that work has focused on outside of our applied degree or our workforce programs. And this project is really designed to focus much of that work around the workforce programs or applied degree programs that community colleges offer in the state of Michigan. Our project has 4 strategies, and Katie, you can move on to the next slide. I should say our project is funded by the Ascendium Education Group, which is a philanthropy that is located in Madison, Wisconsin. And they have, this is the first project they've funded with the Center for Student Success, but they also support outstanding student success work happening across the state. Our My Workforce Pathways project has 4 interrelated but discrete enough strategies that I want to describe each of them for you today. Our first strategy is to work with a small group of community colleges on their workforce program design. Certainly I think over the last couple of years, as we've been navigating the pandemic, there's been so many changes in the labor market, and community colleges are thinking about how their programs are designed. And ensuring that those programs meet local labor market needs. So we'll be in strategy 1, we are working with a small group of community colleges to design those programs. In strategy 2, we will be working with community colleges and certainly our partners, all of you at universities as well, are invited to join us as well, to focus on awarding academic credit for industry credentials. Many of our workforce or applied degree programs prepare students to sit for industry credentials. And what we would like to do is support colleges in their efforts to sort of backwards design that and award credit for credentials if a student has already earned the credit. And then ultimately, we would like to add a feature to the Michigan Transfer Network so we can communicate that information to students and employers. Additional information about that strategy will be released. We're putting together a session in December that provides you with a more detailed overview of what that work will look like. Our third strategy is why you are here today, which is to build on some of the terrific work that's already happened in our statewide or multi-institutional transfer agreements, to build transfer pathways to the bachelor's degree for our students who have completed our applied degree or workforce programs. And that's why we're here today. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. Our fourth strategy, which really could come first, I guess, in this process, is to support colleges in their efforts to provide timely advising interventions to students. One of the things we know from our work is that colleges have dramatically expanded the number of advisors and counselors and coaches and navigators that are helping students access and complete in many of our applied degree programs. What we would like to do with this strategy is work with faculty in those programs and advisors from across the state of Michigan to design some resources to help expose advisors to more information about what's required in these applied degree programs. There are really great opportunities in our programs, but in many cases, advisors just really don't have much of an opportunity to learn more about what is necessary in these fields or where there might be opportunities for students to explore different programs. So we'll be providing, working with colleges from across the state to design some advisor training to be able to support advisors in that work. Next slide. So today we want to talk about specifically strategy number 3, which focuses on transfer. And before we do that, though, I wanted to share with you information that we've put out on our website to provide you with an overview of this project and all the work that we'll be doing. Because there's just so much happening in this project, we put together a video that's about 14 minutes long that goes into a little bit more detail about each one of those strategies. So if you're interested in learning more about the project, we'll drop a link to this website into the chat so that you can go out there, see more about what we're doing, and then also share that with folks on your campus who are interested in learning more. Next slide. Great. So let's focus on strategy 3. So as I mentioned, we are building on the terrific work that we did with all of you to build the My Transfer Pathways agreements. Many of you could probably give this presentation yourself because you were so engaged in that work. But for those of you who may not have been involved, between 2018 and 2020, we worked with over 50 colleges and universities from across the state of Michigan to design what we ended up calling the My Transfer Pathways. And what those are transfer pathway agreements, but it included multiple community colleges, in some cases, all 28 community colleges, and multiple universities. I think one of our agreements is we had 24 universities who participated in those agreements, so that students could start at a community college and then transfer to any one of the, for example, 24 institutions that were part of that agreement. So that work, through that work, we brought faculty together from across the state. We identified the courses that students should take in their first and second year. We ensured that those courses would transfer from the community college to the university. And then we worked with all of you to be able to communicate that on the Transfer Network website, and also communicate that information with your students as well. So I think most of you who are on the phone here were part of that process. The MyTransfer Pathways model, this, for those of you who are involved, this image probably looks familiar to you. But essentially we asked, what we tried to do in this process is that built out various aspects of what make up the associate degree. So the Michigan Transfer Agreement, the major specific courses that students should take, and then electives where students would get their associate degree, and then they would transfer to the university to finish the remaining requirements of the bachelor's degree. So this is the MyTransfer Pathways model. The work that we want to talk with you about today adapts that model in some respects to accommodate the unique needs of our applied degree or workforce programs. One key difference between transfer-related programs, such as a psychology program, is that students are typically taking courses at the community college under the guidance of an advisor, but really we're looking at what the university requires students to take for the bachelor's degree, because ultimately the student is pursuing the bachelor's degree. When it comes to our applied degree programs or our workforce programs, some of you have a variety of different terminology to be able to refer to those programs, but typically the student is taking courses that meet associate degree requirements, because those are the requirements that meet local labor market needs. So the student may not necessarily be interested right away in earning a bachelor's degree. They're really focused on completing the requirements for the associate degree. So when we're reaching out to university partners on these transfer agreements, we would see the similar kind of breakdown of the degree requirements, in that students would complete their applied associate degree at the community college. They would complete the Michigan Transfer Agreement. And then many of you who have 3+1 agreements with community colleges will also outline additional bachelor's degree requirements that students can complete at the community college. Then the student transfers to the university and completes those remaining bachelor's degree requirements. So unlike the MyTransfer Pathways, we're not asking universities to give community colleges guidance on which courses students should take in the associate degree program, but certainly asking universities which courses students should take outside of the associate degree, the MTA, that they could potentially take at the community college or at the university. So I know this is probably elementary to a lot of people on this call, and it's like, Erica, we know all this. This is the work we do every day, and we agree, but we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're trying to go for here. Katie, next slide. Okay, so with all of that background, we have been working with folks at the community colleges to figure out what bachelor's degree programs, in what programs do students who earn an associate degree feel like they really need to earn a bachelor's degree? Where are we seeing students who are saying, I have my associate degree, but I really want to go on and get my bachelor's degree? So we pulled together 4 agreements that we're planning on executing this year, and we'll share that timeline with you a little bit later. 4 planned agreements. I'm going to start at the bottom of the page and I'm going to work my way up. The first agreement is in information technology. Community college students, one of our largest areas where students earn an associate degree are in applied CIS programs. In some cases programming, but also in areas like networking and cybersecurity. And what we're hearing from students is that many more of those students, after they earn their applied associate degree, are interested in earning an applied bachelor's degree in those areas. The second area where we have a significant number of graduates from community colleges is in applied business. So these aren't necessarily the students who are pursuing a Bachelor of Business Administration. Many of them have earned an applied associate degree program, and they're interested in returning and earning a bachelor's degree in applied business. Applied business is the largest applied associate degree that community colleges grant in the state of Michigan, and we increasingly see students who fairly soon after they get their associate degree or even years later decide that they want to pursue a bachelor's degree. The third area where we see increasing interest in bachelor's degree is in healthcare. Specifically in our applied healthcare programs like respiratory therapy, rad tech, medical assisting, and some of those other applied healthcare areas where students are interested in earning applied healthcare bachelor's degrees. And then finally, for a whole bunch of other applied associate degree areas, students are interested in just earning a bachelor's degree. In many cases, universities have developed these agreements in management or leadership, or some of you have a customized customized bachelor's degree program that can accommodate a variety of different applied associate degrees. So let's take a look at some examples that we found from across the state. In the area of the general applied degree, we know that, for example, at Northern Michigan University, they offer an applied workplace leadership program. We've got an example here, two examples here that are looking at a Bachelor of Applied Science that can be customized to meet the student needs. If we go on to healthcare, we can see that Grand Valley offers an allied health sciences for students who have an associate degree in the health professions. And similarly at Oakland University, there's an applied health sciences program. If we continue to think about an applied business degree, our colleagues at Davenport University, again, in another area at Northern Michigan University or at Walsh, provide opportunities for students who have an applied associate degree to earn that a bachelor's degree in an applied business area. And then finally, we have an example here from Rochester University that focuses on Bachelor of Business or BBA in computer information systems for those students who might have an associate degree in networking or in cybersecurity. These are just a few examples that we wanted to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of institutions on the call here today, and part of the reason that we invited you here is because Katie and I, of course, can do some research on what university programs would be a good fit with what we're asking for, but Katie will talk a little bit later about what we call our, what we'll be asking you for in an intent to participate in these agreements, and we welcome to hear more about what programs you offer and what associate degrees you encourage or you're targeting when you're designing those programs. Before we go into that, you will notice when we talk a little bit later about your intent to participate, we're going to ask you, meaning the university folks, to provide us with additional pathways where you have or are developing degree completion programs that might be a good fit for community colleges. So we've targeted those 4 areas, but we recognize that there may be other programs out there that might be a good fit for our model of a statewide transfer agreement. And in the survey that we send to you, we'll be asking you about that. So keep in mind if there are additional pathways that your institution might be interested in, to please share that information with us when you complete your survey. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and we want to talk to you in just another layer of detail about what we'll be asking for from participating institutions. Katie?
Thanks, Erica. Before we move on, we did get a question in the chat that I thought would be helpful to pose for the group, asking about how we might be marketing these types of agreements when they are completed.
That's a great question. So we have a couple of options. Certainly, we will rely on the community colleges who offer those degree programs and who will be participating in the agreement to communicate that information with students. We also collaboratively with all of you manage the Michigan Transfer Network, and our plan would be to include these agreements in the same place where we include the other MyTransfer Pathways agreements to be able to communicate that information with students. The other thing that I think that we're going to want to think about together is how do we communicate these opportunities with students who have already graduated? Because we know that some students typically work after they complete their, during and after completing the associate degree. So we would want to think about how we can communicate that out to students who are already former students and graduates who are already in the labor market as well.
Thank you. And then the only thing I would add is not necessarily a formalized marketing plan, but one of the benefits to doing this work collectively is the relationship building between and among colleges and universities where you may not already have existing relationships. So the person who posed the question to me indicated, some institutions already have robust 3+1 programs, and that's great, but I would bet they're with a small group of usually co-located or geographically close institutions. And one of the benefits to this is that it opens up access for community colleges, and there are several throughout the state that do not have close community partners in four-year institutions and perhaps don't have as many opportunities to offer their students these kind of bachelor's transfer pathways. So that will be a benefit as well in terms of relationship building, because we all know word of mouth goes a long way with students as well. Cool, I just got another question, and yes, we will be sharing the slides, and we will post the recording from today's session for all of you to refer back to or forward on your campuses or beyond if you're interested. Any other questions before we move into the more detailed discussion on terms? If anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand or pop it into the chat. Okay. It looks like we are good to go. I will ask Erica to keep an eye on the chat while I carry on with the presentation. And our next step really will go in on a dirty into the terms of the agreement. And these are copy and pasted directly from a current draft of the agreement. So we're just going to step through them together. These will look familiar to those of you who have reviewed the MyTransfer Pathways agreements, because we essentially modified the terms to fit this different model that we will be using for these pathways. We thought that would be more palatable to institutions that have already gone through a review of the agreement terms, with whether they have to have them reviewed through their legal department or otherwise. We felt that we didn't want to deviate much from the terms that were previously agreed to in those agreements, because we were able to build those by consensus amongst the three sectors in Michigan, the community colleges and the public and private four-year institutions. So the terms will include the effective dating. Typically, articulation agreements have about a 3-year shelf life. So we have been using that for our agreements, and we expect these will go live and the signing will be executed this summer, and then they would go through June 30th of 2025. These agreements do not ensure admission. So if there is a second admit process in any of your four-year programs, this does not guarantee admission to the institution nor to the secondary admit process in your program areas. We are intending to create appendices like we did in the My Transfer Pathways. However, they will not be as long, and I have made sure of that because that is not something that we feel we need to do, nor is it something that we have capacity to do to build huge appendices. However, we will lay out in Appendix A, as enumerated in Term 3 here, which applied associate degrees are eligible for these specific agreements. And in the survey, which we will go through in just a moment as well, we will be asking for your institutions to designate if there are dedicated associate degrees that are eligible or if it is open to any associate degree. And then we will be able to list that in Appendix A, which is very helpful for the advising staff at the community colleges. Term 4, we are asking all of our four-year bachelor granting institutions to accept the Michigan Transfer Agreement in accordance with your own policies around the MTA. This is a little different because we also have added this clause where community college students are encouraged but not required to complete the MTA to participate in this pathway. Why? Because not all applied associate degree programs are including the full MTA in their program plan. So students will not be required to complete the MTA, but they are highly encouraged after they complete their associate degree requirements, if it doesn't include MTA, to take additional courses to complete it, because it's often a better deal for them when they transfer to the four-year institution to have completed the full MTA and then have less general education requirements to complete in the bachelor's degree completion program. So again, community college students not required, but are encouraged to complete the MTA, but four-year institutions are required to accept the MTA because it's just good practice as we build these transfer agreements. As we move further into the terms, we will be asking four-year institutions or bachelor's degree granting institutions to enumerate additional coursework that could be completed at the community college. So again, this has already been mentioned. We won't be calling these 3+1s. That doesn't seem realistic to us given the type and succession of coursework that our students take in the community college sector. But we want to give the opportunity for bachelor's granting institutions to actually designate which courses could be completed above and beyond the associate degree, and have the benefit of that lower cost tuition at the community college, or just perhaps better scheduling or whatever the option would be there. And those courses would then be outlined probably in a type of a worksheet or other listing that we will include in the appendices of the agreement as well. We will not be doing the green box course equivalency matrices that some of you are familiar with from the My Transfer Pathways. We are not requiring that you all go out and create those direct equivalencies, but sure, wouldn't it be nice if you did list those courses and then you could ensure that you are awarding credit with all of your participating community college partners. And as some of you know, we do have a mechanism in the Michigan Transfer Network that allows you to assess and ensure that you are actually offering those equivalencies. And so we would encourage you to assess that yourselves, but we will not be monitoring that as part of the agreement as we have in the past agreements. Term 6 is a standard term in most of your academic catalogs that requires a minimum C or 2.0 or higher, unless you indicate otherwise. There are some content areas where there are different regulations. If that's the case for your program, you'll need to list that, and we will need to decide how we can deal with that in terms of this agreement. And this is a different term from the My Transfer Pathways because a number of students in applied workforce areas do come in or are awarded credit for prior learning. And so we are asking bachelor's degree granting institutions that would like to partner on these agreements to accept any credit for prior learning that was previously applied at the community college. So if it's on the community college transcript, we would like you to and have it count toward your bachelor's degree completion program. Term 8, we would love it if there were no credit limits in terms of a shelf life on credit because of credit expiration policies. We know that in some technical fields and in some healthcare fields, that's not possible. So we will ask you to enumerate that if it is not possible for your program area. But again, wherever possible, we would like to see students get credit for all of their prior coursework without any limitations. I'm not seeing any questions coming in yet, so I'm going to keep going. We are asking all participating bachelor's degree granting institutions to add a website link to the designated on the Michigan Transfer Network. This again will be familiar to those of you that participated in the My Transfer Pathways agreements, because we also asked you to do that there and to explain to students what it means to be a transfer agreement participant in your own terms and give them your own customized information about the completion program on your end. So our expectation would be that you would include any admissions requirements, residency requirements for the program, those lists of additional courses that could be completed at the community college, and any curriculum crosswalks with those colleges that exist, and then let the students know pretty clearly what is left to complete that bachelor's degree. We will also be asking our community colleges to add website links in a similar fashion so that they can include information about the program and these opportunities regarding transfer. And this is where part of the space on the Michigan Transfer Network where it's a marketing kind of feature, if you will, because students will be able to see all of these opportunities that are available to them on one coordinated website. I will get to your question in just a moment. I'm going to finish up the 11th term here. This is legalese that somebody's lawyer told us to add, and it sounded good. So we went ahead and added it, just ensuring that this does not make you a consortium or conglomerate in anything. You're all independent parties doing your own thing, but that you agree to participate and be responsible for your own conduct in the agreement. Okay, I'm going over to the chat. There is a question about the MTA. Can colleges accept the full MTA but still require an additional requirement? Yes, you can. For your institutions often have additional general education requirements that cannot be satisfied by transfer. So that is allowable in the Michigan Transfer Agreement. And if there are institutions on the call today who are not currently signers on the Michigan Transfer Agreement, we do look for that before we execute these pathway agreements, and we would love to help you with the support of the macro organization become new signers on the MTA and make sure that you can meet the spirit of the agreement and follow the associated protocols. Awesome, thanks Mariah, that would be great. Any other questions about the terms? We have another section that I will review with you, but this wraps up the enumerated terms from the agreement. You will be receiving these slides as we shared earlier. So when or if you need to refer back to any of these terms with any of your colleagues or folks in your department or program, you'll have the opportunity to do that through the slides. We are not making a draft available of the agreement yet because we're just not there yet. And we're still vetting interest. So that's kind of how you'll be able to refer back. Okay, so we also in the MyTransfer Pathways agreements attended to some maintenance and review clauses, and we will do the same thing here, although again, slightly different because the context is a little different with these agreements. There will be the opportunity to make modifications for participating institutions. Some of you know our colleague Donna Petrus, who is on the call with us today and who facilitates the protocol to modify or for new signers to join these agreements, the MyTransfer Pathways agreements. And we intend to use a similar process. We haven't really talked about the details to know if it's a similar timeline, but sure makes a lot of sense to stay on the same timeline for modifications and new signers. The modifications that we have in mind would be changes like community colleges that would be eliminating a participating degree that would be laid out in Appendix A, or bachelor's degree programs, eliminating their participating degrees or modifying additional coursework lists that would be denoted in that Appendix C that we talked about earlier. If any of those changes occur, we would expect that the project or the program agreement liaison would communicate that with us according to the protocol and timeline that is on the mytransfer.org website. It is all fairly documented. There's a very technical document that lays out all of the requirements to complete the protocol to modify or join. So I wouldn't get too worried about it right now, but we wanted you to know that those allowances will be made in the agreement. If you'd like to join the agreement and you don't sign on right away, you can contact us and we will give you the details on that protocol and associated timelines. Right now, we're operating a twice per year timeline for this protocol. Again, I would assume we will do the same, but we haven't laid out the explicit details. Erica did just put the link into the protocol information if you're interested. But again, if you're new to this, I would say don't start there. Let's start elsewhere because the protocol gets really technical really fast. We will renew the agreements much like we have intended for the MyTransfer Pathways at the end of the 3-year agreement shelf life, if you will. That is the time when if you've decided you need to leave the agreement, you can do it. We will not accommodate folks leaving the agreement sooner than that unless there is an elimination of the program as denoted in the modifications clause. We will be coordinating a renewal of the agreement as it comes closer to the end, just like we planned to with the MyTransfer Pathways. Before I move on to talk through the intent to participate survey, are there any questions about any of this detail? Okay, so what do you do now? If all of this sounds great and you're interested in building agreements with hopefully many of the, or if not all of the 28 community colleges that we represent at MCCA, you will be excited to fill out the intent to participate survey. In the past, we have used the Sign Up Genius, and I have failed miserably at creating logic for the Sign Up Genius. So this time we're using Google Forms, which will allow us to collect information and more easily aggregate it into a spreadsheet and share it amongst our own project staff. The best way to signal your intent to participate is not to email us. It's to fill out the Google survey that is linked below, and I believe Erica will plop into the chat as well. It is live and open now, and we will ask that you complete it by 5 p.m. on December 10th. You should complete one survey for each bachelor's degree program at your institution. So if you are at an institution that has 4 program areas that might be interested, maybe one for each one of the agreements, then you will complete 4 surveys. It is possible that you will have 4 different people completing the survey, or you will have a single person who acts as a centralized sort of transfer liaison, like we did with the My Transfer Pathways, completing the survey. We don't care. We don't care how you do that at your institution. Just do what makes sense for you. When you complete the survey in a moment, I'll show you the fields that we're requesting, but you will be designating a single point of contact for us who will then serve as that POC for the rest of the steps that are necessary to completing the agreement. So you can pull up the survey and look at it now because Erica did put the link into the chat, or you can look at my screenshots, which show you exactly what information is requested. The information requested is your email address, your name, your title, and your phone number. We are asking email right off the bat because Google allows you to send a read receipt. And so all of you who complete the survey will receive a read receipt to confirm that it was submitted. You will also include your institution, the name of the bachelor's degree completion program, and a website link to information about your program so that we can review it. You will share information about which associate degrees your program is open to. If any, you can just write any, or if there are just specific degree types, we would ask you to list all of those in this single short answer field. And then the second question would be, if there are any programs that are explicitly excluded, you can go ahead and list those here as well. The next set of questions ask you to designate which agreement or agreements your program is interested in participating with. Some of your programs may be able to participate in more than one of these transfer agreements, and we would ask you to select all that apply. If it's just one, then just select the one. We are asking you to review the terms of the agreement. And again, the terms are embedded in this slide deck, and you will find it at that link after today's program. To review the terms, and then you get to answer yes, no, or maybe if you can meet the terms. So we're hoping it's a yes and it's easy, but if there's a no or a maybe, we would really like to understand more about that, and you'll have the chance to answer that in the second question that follows up. And then at the very bottom, it's cut off a little bit on my screen, but the last question is, are there bachelor's degree completion programs that you offer that are outside of the currently planned 4 types? And this is where you would list those. So we have enough time and potentially enough capacity in the project to deliver additional agreements after we see how these first 4 go. We would like to get input and feedback from all of you about what programs exist so that we can work with our community college leadership group to make sure that it's a good fit to their needs and the programs that are being offered on their campuses. So this is the spot where you would let us know kind of what other program areas your institution or your colleagues might be interested in. I see a question, but it sounds like we can talk about it in just a moment. Today's program is geared toward the bachelor's degree completion or the bachelor's granting institutions, but we recognize we have a number of our community college colleagues on the line today who wanted to find out more detail about what these agreements would look and feel like. And so we wanted to let you all know that you will receive a different intent to participate survey a little further down the road. Our first step was to identify the universe of interest in the bachelor's granting programs. And then we will similarly offer an intent to participate survey for interested community colleges. Erica has also developed 2 office hours that are coming up over the next few weeks for folks that have questions about the project writ large. So it doesn't have to be just a question about the transfer pathways that we're building, but if community college personnel have questions about the project, you can drop into those office hours there. And I believe I can roll back up to the question now.
I can ask it, Katie. So Betsy from UD Mercy asked if we could elaborate on what is meant by the statement that we expect the four-year to accept all credits from prior coursework and have them count toward the bachelor's degree completion. And can we give an example? So Betsy, if you're referring to the term that is related to asking universities to accept credit for prior learning, what we'd like to do there, for example, is if a community college awarded students credit for, let's say, an AP test in mathematics, for example, we're asking the participating universities to honor that credit as part of this agreement, as opposed to, for example, asking the student to go back and retake that math course from years ago, because maybe you wouldn't normally honor that kind of prior learning credit. This is also related to the other part of this project I described a little earlier, where we're helping colleges award credit for industry credentials. So if a student has earned credit for a credential, for example, if they are in a CIS program and they already have taken the test for CCNA 1, and the community college gave them college credit for that particular course, we would expect that the university would honor that as part of the transfer agreement in that as well, recognizing that the student still needs to meet degree requirements at your institution. So they're still going to need to have a total number of credit hours that they meet at your institution. And we wouldn't ask you to, waive any of those requirements, but we also wouldn't want students to have to go back and take their very first CIS course because the community college awarded prior learning credit. Jonathan then asked, what if they are brought in as elective credit rather than specific credit? Jonathan, that's a good question. As part of this agreement, we are asking institutions to award credit for the entire associate degree and then outline what requirements are left for the bachelor's degree. So I think we're kind of agnostic if you bring that in as elective credit or specific credit, because of course these kinds of degree completion programs, credit awarding is a little bit different than it is in our other transfer related programs.
Other questions?
Hey, this is Jonathan again. This is too complicated to try and text all this in. Sure. I know, because I've been in some other meetings with you guys, I know there's some work towards the AP. It just seems to me that everybody's so all over the map. And so somebody in a meeting I was recently in referenced that for a 3 in history, they give 8 credits. And it's just like, there's no way we're giving 8 credits for a 3 in AP history. So for us to say, yep, we'll take whatever they take, that was just kind of blew me off my chair, because I was like, that's a lot of credits for a 3, and I don't know what others think about that. So that's that makes me nervous to hear that some community colleges might be doing that large of we're only giving those sorts of credits when students get 5s, we do get credit for 3s, but not 8.
Right. I haven't heard that. I would be interested in that example so I can look up the policy and get a little more detail about it. But the idea that Erica was describing, and I don't know if it makes sense or not here, but is that you wouldn't need to do that single course to course equivalency in this type of an agreement, because you would be accepting that full AAS degree. And then the idea being that what's left to complete your bachelor's degree is outside of the scope of what the student would have needed to do at the associate degree level. It's a little confusing. I'm going to go back to the graphic, because the only way I would see this causing a conflict on one of the 4-year campuses is if the AP credit was going to count toward this block right here, the 3rd block down, where you are enumerating those courses that students could take at the community college that are above and beyond what they would have taken for their associate degree. And that would then be the only time, in my opinion, that you would need to do that course to course alignment for this type of agreement. Am I speaking out of turn there, or does that make sense?
It does. And we can talk about what the specific course was that they mentioned this. But if we're bringing in the AAS as a whole, but the student doesn't have the MTA, would we be expected to say, yep, your gen eds are done?
No, the student
Okay,
is being encouraged. The student is being encouraged, if the MTA is not included in part of their as required in their applied degree program, we are encouraging the community colleges to advise students to complete the MTA after they've completed the associate degree requirements before they would transfer to your four-year institution to receive the benefits of the MTA. Now, the student might decide not to do that, or they want to transfer sooner and they don't want to monkey around with it or whatever. But as most of you know, if they complete the MTA, it's a good deal for them. Oftentimes they don't have to take as many courses in your gen ed. They might still have to take some required courses that are above and beyond the MTA, but no, you are not required to certify them as MTA unless they have completed it. Other questions?
Katie, while folks are typing, these are the kinds of questions we strongly encourage you to let us know about in the intent to participate survey, so that we can go through all of those and then make sure that we can incorporate those into the agreement and that there's clarity across institutions as well. So thanks for asking them, and don't hesitate to include those in the survey as well.
Yes, please. And don't feel like if you say no or maybe up here, that doesn't mean you can't participate. It's our way of collecting data from you about whether or not this is going to work in the large scale. So there is that section here that I've pulled up on the survey for you to enumerate that a little bit further. And we can always have a phone call, because I do recognize a lot of this gets real complex real fast. And you can always note that in your survey results, or just send us an email and we can try to have a conversation about it as well. I am going to keep clicking forward and share what our timeline is. Feel free to keep adding your questions into the chat, or in a moment we'll be done shortly and we can certainly open it up for additional dialogue. We have had several meetings already. We have a small group of dedicated community college leaders who have provided a lot of input in the work we've done so far to develop the agreement and kind of come up with the paradigm for the agreement. So we're really grateful to those folks, several of whom who are on the call today, for your help and input. And we were able to pose this project and this idea to the transfer steering committee, who does continue to meet and who provided kind of that insight or input and oversight over the My Transfer Pathways project. So those folks have heard about this and gave us some great feedback and some goodwill to move forward. And then here we are today on November 4th, having this convening to share our vision with our prospective university partners. The survey is live, and we are requesting that you complete it by the close of business on December 10th. We will be having another strategy session with our community college partners early in January, and my expectation is that we would be probably reaching out more formally to ask for community college intent to participate sometime after that. We will be continuing to develop and refine the agreements in the winter and spring months, and then we expect to sign the articulation agreements over the summer. We'd like to have them posted up on our mytransfer.org website and deployed on your campuses beginning next fall. And then we will have some additional training and support and perhaps marketing. Sometimes we are able to create at the end of these projects some digital media tools that folks can use to indicate their participation. We also highly encourage you all to pursue earned media. These are kind of cool. And we are, as far as we know, one of the first states to be doing this in the US in a state coordinated fashion for this type of degree program. So I think there could be some interest in earned media if you wanted to pull your communications folks in after we get a little further along. In this timeline, what's not explicitly listed, but what you will expect is we will have another survey that will ask for your formal commitment and a designation of your signers, just like we did in the My Transfer Pathways. But I know not all of you are participants in that agreement. So that's how that works. The process is done electronically. You tell us who should sign, give us their email address, and then they use an electronic signature process to complete that and execute the agreements. And I am seeing some other questions coming in. Maybe I'll yeah. Okay, question. How many credits are most health-related AAS programs which you're envisioning. A quick review, it can range from 62 to 90, which may present a unique challenge of credits needed. Woo, yeah. So good question. I cannot answer that myself. Maybe Erica can, related to the enumerated credits. I can tell you that there are some interesting consortial agreements that help to support this kind of a transfer agreement already existing between and among local institutions. So we recognize, particularly in the community college sector, if your student receives their associate degree and then wants to keep taking classes, they may be in conflict with SAP regulations for the receipt of financial aid. So there are a couple of ways around that, and I don't know that we're going to answer all of those questions today, but I think we can provide some support and guidance from our network as to how they've done it. I know for some folks, they have been creative with their catalogs. They have created different catalog codes for different types of programs to facilitate so that students don't have a conflict with SAP. We also know that there are already formal consortial agreements that allow students to either be concurrently enrolled or receive financial aid after they've completed the degree because they're doing a 3+1 type agreement like this. I know that doesn't answer your question fully, Jonathan, but does that help? And yes, some of the associate degrees, I mean, they will range in number of credit hours required, number of classes required. It could pose an issue for some of your residency requirements, depending on how these completion programs are situated. I will tell you, we really are looking for completion programs. So when I went through, I studied probably half of the catalogs of the four-year institutions in the state to look for the types of agreements we were envisioning. And I didn't see a whole lot of them. I'm going to be very honest with you. Many of them are what we would call a traditional program that assumes the student will be a direct entry to your four-year institution and is completing a succession of courses and credits over a 4 or 5 year period right on your campus. There are just a few of these kind of traditional bachelor's completion programs already baked, if you will. So a question we've received is, can you take us if we want to do this? And we are just getting things together to put forward to our curriculum committee. We kind of can't. We kind of need you to have this degree ready to go because the students need to be able to have the program up and running in order to participate in it. We are interested in providing kind of a peer network for folks who might want to learn from one another who have already done this work and maybe moving through those curriculum approvals, but it is not our intention to be providing that support at that level in this project. Erica, did I describe that correctly?
Yeah, I certainly, I think in the Katie, what you described in the modifications and joining the agreement, there will certainly be opportunities because we do know that many of you are in the midst of designing programs. So we have put a process in place for more institutions to join us.
Yep, exactly. And we also, I've talked with a few folks at four-year institutions about your BGS degrees. Some of you have those Bachelor's of General Studies degrees, which are not necessarily fashioned as completion programs right now, but have some flexibility in them. And some of you are considering maybe modifying the way that you're communicating about those types of programs. And I would say if that's your case, let's talk about it offline. We would probably need to take a closer look at it and make sure that it does meet the spirit of the completion requirement, which is what we're looking for here. What other questions are there? Thank you, Shannon. We are excited about these, and there are some really cool things going on, both at MICU and MASU institutions, and of course at the community colleges. We have learned so much from our community college partners about what good agreements look and feel like for students, and so we appreciate, again, their support. I will encourage anybody who still has questions to stay on the line, but recognizing that we are at the end of our slides, I will let you know that you can certainly contact myself, Erica, or our colleague Jenny if you have further questions, and there is a whole list of linked references from this slide deck that we will make available to you after today's program. So that's it. If you want to hang out and ask further questions, we'll stay on the line and we can certainly talk with you via chat as well. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your interest.
And again, we'll stay on, but I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for now.